Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya. Homage to the Buddha, the perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the Dhamma, the teachings leading to enlightenment. Homage to the Sangha, the community. Welcome everyone. Today, as we have done many days before, we will concern ourselves with the Buddha, with the Dhamma, and with the Sangha. It's important that anyone who's here should know beforehand and understand for themselves that this is not a place for entertainment, and that what we are doing here is more serious than serious business. It is more serious than a very high-paying job interview, or making sure that you're doing a good job while you're being paid a lot of money hourly. It's much more important than that, significantly more. So act accordingly. Today we will be helped and supported by the Dhamma master, Shifu Sheng, who is a Chan master and a fundamental teacher for many, many thousands and thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. His impact is significantly more important and more beneficial than the impact of any American president in history. So we are really blessed to be able to experience these teachings together. So let's begin by really recollecting in ourselves a sense of gratitude for this opportunity to hear the Dhamma and to be in this, under this umbrella of the true Sangha. So we can take a moment to sit like that and reflect on ourselves and reflect on a sense of gratitude for this opportunity. The experiences of limitless consciousness, bliss, being, and other feelings associated with samadhi, which is absorption into meditation, a deeper state of meditation, are actually the projections of what we call the great or expanded sense of self. Until this particular impediment is removed, enlightenment has not dawned, and one is still subject to the bonds of deluded existence. So, Chan Master Sheng, Shifu Sheng, deep meditation and deep meditation experience is not enlightenment, and it doesn't mean you get it. There are a lot of people with deep meditation experiences that do not get it, okay? And does not get it means they have not dropped the view of a self, okay? They haven't seen through the veil, so to speak. We'll go directly into the 7 phases of meditative development by Chan Master Sheng Yen. We have a little bit of an introduction to this article. When teaching the cultivation of stabilizing the mind and the notion of gradual cultivation and sudden enlightenment, Chan Master Sheng Yen realized that people need some kind of guideposts along the way to break it down, instead of thinking of enlightenment as happening suddenly from zero. So this is the very important point, that enlightenment is not something that comes from zero. Enlightenment is something that comes from abandoning your life or taking the path exceedingly seriously and devoting yourself to changing your life from that which fuels and maintains and is informed by your greediness, your tension, your angriness, and your non-practical, complicated thinking. So all notions of enlightenment coming from zero are wrong, are incorrect. And there are always exceptions, but this is the rule. All right, let's step into it. By far, the biggest problem faced by meditators is the condition of a scattered and confused mind. And the majority of the techniques for taming the mind are designed to address this problem. The Buddhist scriptures describe many such practices, each with its own particular content and procedure. However, despite the apparent differences, these methods share the common aim of bringing the scattered mind to a condition of one-pointed concentration, and finally to the realization of no mind. For the purpose of conveying to my students some idea of this process, I use a series of 7 diagrams, of which illustrates a particular degree of mental concentration or lack thereof. These 7 diagrams are not meant to describe a set of fixed stages that every person must experience. Meditative development is highly individualized and cannot be so rigidly codified. At best, the scheme is meant to give a basic understanding of the meditative process and some measure by which to determine whether one's practice is correct. Buddhist teachers will generally assign different techniques of meditation according to the specific emotional disposition and meditative needs of the given student. We will have occasion to discuss some of these methods and their usage later. For the present illustration, I will discuss the phases of meditative development in relation to the method of counting breaths. Counting breaths is the most elemental practice in a traditional set of techniques known as recollection or mindfulness of breathing. Sanskrit, anapanasmriti. Anapanasmriti, or in Pali, anapanasati, and especially counting breaths, is particularly effective for counteracting a scattered, distracted mind. Thus, it has long been used by Buddhists as a method for beginners, as well as a foundational practice for other meditation methods. Okay, anyone here ever have a scattered mind? Maybe the better question, does anyone here ever not have a scattered mind? Okay, so this is the excuse me? Okay, so this is the diagram for a scattered mind. Okay, does your mind look like that? Is this what your mind looks like? Okay. The scattered mind prior to meditation. Before taking up the method of counting breaths, there is no consistent object on which to focus the mind. Thoughts ceaselessly turn and stir. Attention is fragmented from one instant to the next, as it darts off in countless directions in pursuit of one object after another. We hanker after sensory data and sensations from our surroundings, reminisce over the past, and anticipate the future. The scattered dots in the diagram represent the random thoughts and sensations of a confused and unfocused mind. The broken dashes, the fragmented stream of one's attention. Okay, so most of the people, most of the time, are wandering around with a confused and scattered mind. Okay? A confused and scattered mind full of random thoughts, unfocused and confused. Most of the people, most of the time that you encounter, are in a state of confusion. Okay? Okay, number 2, second diagram. All right. Second diagram here. Initial efforts to apply the method of meditation. When first taking up the practice of counting the breath, so counting the breaths, friends, we're going to sit down and we're going to focus on our breaths, our breathing that's happening moment by moment, and we're going to count it, right? So you take a deep breath in, then you breathe out, 1. Breathe in, breathe out, 2. Just like that. So initial efforts to apply the method of meditation. When first taking up the practice of counting breaths, your attention will often wander away from breath and number, okay? Or many associated thoughts will intrude, such as concerns over how to count the number or how to regard the breath. You are able to sustain the count for short stretches, but usually this is interrupted before long. By repeatedly bringing your attention mind back to the method, the confusion of wandering thoughts gradually is brought under control, and a steady stream of focus begins to develop, enduring for longer and longer stretches of time. The broken line running through the center of the diagram represents the fitful emergence of a steady stream of concentration. That is to say, the mind concentrated on the method. The surrounding marks and dots indicate the continued presence of distractedness and scattered thoughts, but the firm line developing in the center shows that concentration is beginning to assert control. So very quickly, actually, we began to have some concentration. We began to have some stabilization in the mind, right? It happens very quickly. But in that are these broken periods. So we're concentrated for a little bit, then it breaks, and then mind wanders, and then we get that concentration back. We continue, then it breaks, and the mind wanders. But in the midst of that, there are also kind of scattered thoughts coming up and going away. All right? Now, because of how confused most people are, they will not be able to meditate in a sustained way. So Buddhism is not just about meditation, it's about doing good deeds, it's about generosity, it's about following precepts, and if you can't do that, you're probably not going to be successful in meditation. And with the short reading we had started with at the beginning from Shifu Sheng, it's explained that even these samadhi states, even these deep concentration states that you may come across, that you may experience in meditation, are not enlightenment, are not inherently insight, right? You're still confused, you're just confused in a less confusing way. You haven't broken through anything yet. And the point of Buddhism is not to have, be less confused in a confusing way, it's to be free. Okay? But if you don't practice seriously, then you will not become free. And you have to be less confused before you're not confused at a fundamental level, at an integral level, right? Once you enter the stream, for example. Okay, number 3, coarse but unbroken application of the method. Coarse but unbroken application of the method. Let's take a look at this. Okay, coarse but unbroken application of the method. By the third level, you are able to maintain uninterrupted concentration and count each number in perfect succession for a span of at least 10 minutes. Nevertheless, the concentration is coarse, and there are still many subtle wandering and scattered thoughts that impinge on the margins of your attention. Although concentration may ripple and waver momentarily, these thoughts are never powerful enough to cause you to completely lose sight of the number and the method. So that is that although your concentration is rippling and wavering because these certain thoughts are coming up, kind of distracting a bit, right? Even though that's happening, they are never powerful enough to keep you from the method. And the method is the coming back to present moment experience, coming back to reality. Right? So where's reality? Come here, I'll give you a slap on the face. I'll show you what reality is. Okay? So the meditation method means we don't have to come to Bante's room to get a slap in the face. We can slap ourselves in the face with the meditation method to come back to the present moment, to come back to reality instead of our state of constant deluded confusion that we are usually in. Okay? So, although on the third level, coarse but unbroken application of the method, although concentration may ripple and waver momentarily, these thoughts, while you're sitting there focusing on being in the present moment, are never powerful enough to cause you to completely lose sight of the number and the method, so counting the breath. The solid line through the center represents the uninterrupted flow of concentration over time. The surrounding rounding dots and occasional slashes that intersect the line illustrate the subtle mental static and coarse thoughts that periodically invade your field of awareness. Okay? Now we're on to 4. Now we're starting to get to something. Let's look at the diagram, the image for number 4. Okay? Just a straight line with a few dots on the side, on the sides. Okay. Subtle and unbroken application of the method. Just as before, we do have a PDF document that we can share. I've ordered an assistant. I'm waiting for them to be delivered, but it might take a while. Okay, so the open discussion channel now has the PDF uploaded, so you can access it there, and you just flip a few pages and you'll find it. All right, in the open discussion channel. Yes, dear. Okay, subtle and unbroken application of the method. Just as before, you are able to maintain concentration on counting breaths without interruption. But at this point, scattered thoughts are now greatly reduced. Distractions associated with the sensory environment pose almost no problem. Occasionally, wandering thoughts invented by the mind will come into consciousness and then slide away. To you, however, their presence and subsequent rippling effect remain peripheral to the mainstream of mindfulness. In this respect, diagram 4 represents a more subtle stage of concentration than diagram 3. And your awareness is now quite clear and settled on the method. When a wandering thought does arise, you are clearly aware of it, from beginning to end. But the stream of concentration is too deep and strong for these eddies of thought to divert it. Now, this is fine and not a problem, but it is also a way of training the mind, right? The method is a way for you to train your mind to become less confused, to become more clear, to become more precise, to be less carried away by deluded thoughts that come into your head or reactive to the environment. There's a pigeon outside, and you go yell at it or something. Okay? All right, number 5, which is just 3 straight lines. Pure but effortful concentration on the method. In the 5th diagram, there exists only pure counting of breaths. There are neither scattered distractions from the sensory environment nor internal fantasies of deluded thinking. Nonetheless, there is still a lucid sense of the act or process of meditation itself. There is an awareness of a self that is counting breaths. The breaths that are being counted and the number that is counted and seized upon as the main object of concentration. Okay, so in this 5th level of meditative phases, you're just counting the breath, and there are not scattered distractions from the environment, nor are there internal fantasies of deluded thinking. Okay, and this is the tough stuff, all right? But, we've got to kind of meet that with our goodness, because if you do not cultivate your goodness, if you do not cultivate your virtue, if you do not cultivate your generosity, then when you realize that your life and yourself is primarily internal fantasies of deluded thinking, you're going to be very disconcerted. You might have a panic attack, for example, or the panic will be related to the intensity of awareness of the internal fantasies of deluded thinking, right? So the merit that we develop, the generosity that we practice, the precepts that we follow are very important, because then, even though you're having a panic attack, You can say, oh, but I'm a really good person, so you know what? That's fine. You know, I'm processing some emotions or I'm dealing with stuff. But if you're, and the good there is directly correlated to generous. Because if you're a very self-fixated good person that only knows about grasping onto their own ego, their own ideas, their own possessions, then you being a good person isn't going to help you in that panic attack because you don't know how to let go. You don't know how to release. You don't know how to detach from the view of yourself. But if your goodness is founded in generosity, then your goodness is directly correlated to the practice of what? Of actively letting go, of actively releasing the tension from self-grasping. This is mine. This is I, right? So the generosity is the very important part. Okay, so in this fifth phase of your meditative practice, pure but effortful concentration on the method. You're only experiencing the pure counting of the breaths. There are no scattered distractions. You don't have internal fantasies going on. Nonetheless, there is still a lucid sense of the act or process of meditation itself. So it's kind of like there's a self-awareness about what you're doing, but you're only aware of what you're doing and you're not distracted by other things. Okay? There is an awareness of a self, of a someone that is counting breaths. The breaths that are being counted and the number that is counted and seized upon as the main object of concentration. The concentration itself is pure and unified, but there is still an effortful and ongoing attention to the method. So you're practicing the method purely, but you still have attachment to the method. All right? And with that goes this kind of tension or this effort of a self, of a someone that's practicing the method. Though all other extraneous disturbances may have disappeared, the thread of this tripartite, consisting of three parts. Okay, the thread of this tripartite of complex of thoughts remains and continues without interruption, right? Because you're self-aware of inhaling, you're self-aware of exhaling, and you're counting. So there's still this three things that you're kind of attached to, even though your concentration is pure. Thus, the single thread of concentration, when investigated more closely, is really a complex weaving of three basic threads, which is represented in the diagram by the three lines together. At this juncture, your mind is highly simplified and concentrated. In fact, you will likely be on the doorsteps of samadhi or unified mind. Okay. Any questions so far? Christina, you look like you're chomping at the bit over there. You want to say something? Okay, good. So we're at the doorsteps of samadhi. We're at the doorsteps of deep absorption, deep peace, kind of absorption into reality. The unified mind of samadhi, one line. In the sixth diagram, your mind is so concentrated that the act of meditation itself, both the counting of the number and the presence of the breath, is forgotten. Right? See, this is the interesting point, and this is where we confuse ourselves. This is where people get very confused about their level of meditation or their level of insight. Because we're using the method to, anybody know? Yes, Kit. We're using the method to, go ahead. To detach from the method, that's right. Okay, thank you, Kit. That's correct. But if you do not do that, then you won't be letting go of something that's valuable. You won't be letting go of something that you're actually holding on to. You'll be letting go of something that is flippant, something that you would just throw in the trash, or something that you would just forget about or leave by the side. And then you say, oh, I got it. I let go of everything. But you haven't actually let go of your grasping onto the concentrated, effortful, self-fixated mind, even as pure and clear as it is. Right? So in the sixth diagram, your mind is so concentrated that the act of meditation itself, both the counting of the number and the presence of the breath, is forgotten. As the mind becomes truly calm and concentrated, the act of effortful meditation itself seems coarse and distracting. Okay? So your mind is so calm, your mind is so concentrated that the act of effortful meditation itself seems coarse and distracting. Letting go of it, number and breath vanish, and body, breath, and mind meld into a single unity. At this point, you may feel as though spatial distinctions no longer pertain among body, mind, and the world. The opposition between self and other people seems to vanish, and the boundary between the internal and external dissolves. The previous sense of dividedness is replaced by a feeling of pure and harmonious being that is so wondrous as to be indescribable. Very, very subtle. Very, very subtle. Don't let the intellectual mind pollute it. Very, very subtle. Very, very refined. This is the basic experience of samadhi, or what we variously refer to as meditative absorption, unified mind, and one-pointedness of mind. However, there are many levels of samadhi, some shallow, some deep. They can range from the simple and relatively shallow experience of purity and oneness described above to experiences of infinite light and sound, boundless space, limitless consciousness, limitless emptiness, and even the inconceivable experiences of enlightenment described in such Buddhist scriptures as the Avatamsaka or the Huayan Sutra. Regardless of how sublime the content, such states of meditative absorption are still defiled by the presence of discriminating thought and attachment. This defilement is none other than the subtle sense of selfhood. I am someone meditating, someone experiencing this. At deeper levels of samadhi, the mind becomes so supple and powerful that even the subtlest thought is experienced on an extraordinarily vast scale. Because attachment to self is still operating in samadhi, samadhi actually entails the magnification of self to a cosmic scale. The experiences of limitless consciousness, bliss, being, and other feelings associated with samadhi are actually the projections of what we call the great or expanded sense of self. Until this particular impediment is removed, enlightenment has not dawned, and one is still subject to the bonds of deluded existence. Samadhi experiences of this ilk will be no more than a mundane or worldly samadhi, and the spiritual insights generated from them, a mundane wisdom still tainted by defiling outflows. So, in these phases of meditation, we've started out by not meditating. And then we picked up a simple meditation method, such as counting the breath or being mindful of our breathing, okay, and being, relaxed about life. And then we've gotten to this point where now we're really meditating, we're fully concentrated. And not only are we fully concentrated, but now we're going into these deep, special states of experiences. unimaginable states of depth, sublimeness, suppleness of human experiencing, right? And what Shifu Sheng, it's almost like a trap that he just set for us here. Because now we've entered into samadhi, we've gotten what we want from meditation, and Shifu Sheng Yan is telling us, regardless of how sublime the content, such states of meditative absorption are still defiled by the presence of discriminating thought and attachment. So we've hit a dead end in a certain sense. And Shifu Sheng Yan isn't even saying here at all that these are like important. He's saying that they are not enlightenment. They are not freedom. They are not to be grasped onto. As if we could, but he's not saying that. He's not saying that we should seek that out. But we do practice this way, we do approach this way because those sublime states, those subtle states of mind can help us in a lot of different ways to have more faith, to continue on the path, to heal and stabilize our mind. And also, that initial practice is also doing that, because we're going from this place of a mind of delusion and fantasy all the time and confusion all the time to a mind that's stable and concentrated and can actually listen and can actually apply the mind in a sustained, stable, simple way. Okay? So, regardless of how sublime the content, such states of meditative absorption are still defiled by the presence of discriminating thought and attachment. This defilement is none other than the subtle sense of selfhood. At deeper levels of samadhi, the mind becomes so supple and powerful that even the subtlest thought is experienced on an extraordinary vast scale. Because attachment to self is still operating in samadhi, samadhi actually entails the magnification of self to a cosmic scale. The experiences of limitless consciousness, limitless bliss, limitless being, and other feelings associated with samadhi are actually the projections of what we call the great or expanded sense of self. Until this particular impediment is removed, enlightenment has not dawned, and one is still subject to the bonds of deluded existence. Samadhi experiences of this kind will be no more than a mundane or worldly samadhi, and the spiritual insights generated from them, a mundane wisdom still tainted by defiling outflows. Meaning that this defiling outflows, my understanding of it is limited, but it's that you've had these samadhis, you've had this spiritual insight that correlates with that direct experience of those samadhis, but ultimately they're worldly. You're attached to them. You're attached to the view that you experience them, right? So because you are still attached to the view that you experience them, even though it's profound and it's connected to wisdom and all that jazz, okay, that attachment mind, that grasping mind outflows. It grabs onto this, it grabs onto that, and the kind of like energy of practice, the energy of the way, the pathfinding heart, it goes out into the world. It flows out instead of continuing that practice all the time within yourself. It goes out with that attachment. It attaches to this, it attaches to that. It flows out. So that mundane wisdom is still tainted by these outflows of attachment that defile it, that define it really. Okay, can anyone guess what the seventh diagram looks like? Does anyone know what the seventh diagram looks like? What does it look like, Kit? Very good. What is that? That's right. There's no... oh, my camera hasn't been on in here. Great job. Okay. So, that's right. Well, we're doing something right because there's nothing in that last diagram. So I don't even have to show it to everyone. Okay? So in the seventh diagram, there is no line of concentration, no thought, no mark of any kind. Body, mind, and environment have all genuinely disappeared. Okay? Key is that word genuinely. Time and space are blown apart, and any sense of existence or non-existence has vanished. Genuinely disappeared, vanished. It's not in the realm of rejection. It's not in the realm of getting rid of something, right? Vanished, genuinely disappeared. You have entered a realm of existence and quiescence. Oh, excuse me. You have entered a realm of... Before, time and space are blown apart, and any sense of existence or non-existence has vanished. So not existence or non-existence, vanished. You have entered a realm of emptiness and quiescence. So like quiescence is the natural calm, the natural settledness, the natural settled state, that nature is settled, right? Nature is not figuring out if hippopotamuses are better than squirrels. It's quiescent. Discrimination is quiescent in nature. So you have entered a realm in this seventh phase, no self, no mind. You have entered a realm of emptiness and quiescence, a realm that transcends all subjective emotion and points of view. A realm that transcends all subjective emotion and points of view. This is the experience of supra-mundane samadhi and wisdom of no mind that is free of the defiling illusion of self. There is no way to effectively describe it. All words and images are useless, but you will have tasted true freedom and peace. Just as with the experience of mundane samadhi, you should be aware that there are also many levels of supramundane samadhi and many degrees of insight into no mind or no self. Sometimes the influence of the root illusions and defilements is merely lessened or temporarily suspended. Sometimes it is severed, but only to a partial degree. In all these cases, the insight of emptiness or no mind will qualitatively be the same, but the intensity and clarity will vary. So, this is from my understanding, I'm just starting to get into this side of things, so bear with me. But from my understanding, this is explicitly talking about the differences between the egoic samadhi, or the samadhi of special experiences, or the samadhi of feeling peaceful, feeling calm, right? Feeling even very special experiences like the jhanas in Buddhism. In Theravada Buddhism, we call them the jhanas, these like stages of absorption, right? The difference between these, which can be very profound and very deep and very meaningful, and becoming a stream enterer, attaining insight, attaining true insight, right? So there's been a very strong kind of misdirection in the Western Buddhist world with a lot of the young, online Buddhist Western people, with this coming from traditions such as Kaldasa and the Mind Illuminated, and Daniel Ingram's Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha, which is why we don't look at those texts here, we don't work with those texts here. That fixation on these special states is enlightenment, that some special state that you experience is enlightenment, or a form of enlightenment, or an entry point to enlightenment, and it is not, right? No self, no mind. In the seventh diagram, there is no line of concentration, no thought, no mark of any kind. Body, mind, and environment have all genuinely disappeared. Time and space are blown apart, and any sense of existence or non-existence has vanished. Both existence and non-existence are not there. They've vanished. You have entered a realm of emptiness and quiescence, a realm that transcends all subjective emotion and point of view. So a realm that transcends all subjective emotion and point of view, so that no point of view is not transcended in that realm. No point of view is not transcended in that realm of emptiness. This is the experience of supramundane samadhi and wisdom of no mind. Wisdom of no mind. That is free of the defiling illusion of self. Free of the defiling illusion of self. There is no way to effectively describe it. So how do you think there is a way that you could effectively, intellectually understand it? Right? If the dude himself, who has experienced it to a very high degree, says there is no way to effectively describe it from that experience, from that position, then how can you intellectually understand it or grasp it? You cannot. You can experience jhanas, or you can experience special deep states of meditation, but you cannot understand no mind. That is a defining factor of no mind, the wisdom of no mind. Why? Because it is free of the defiling illusion of self. It is free of the defiling illusion of separation, for example. There is no way to effectively describe it. All words and images are useless, but you will have tasted true freedom and peace. Just as with the experience of the mundane samadhis, so like the deep states of meditation, you should be aware that there are also many levels of supramundane samadhi and many degrees of insight into no mind or no self. So in Theravada Buddhism, for example, we have Sotapanna, Sakyagami, Anagami, and Arahant. All right, these 4 stages of enlightenment. And in the Mahayana tradition, they've done a lot more work. They've created some new systems. Most people are not equipped to look into that and understand more about that. But anyway, so there's still these degrees of development even after you've got it, even after you've become a stream enterer, for example. So there are many levels, many degrees of insight into no mind or no self. Sometimes the influence of the root illusions and defilements is merely lessened or temporarily suspended. So that would be in the case of like a stream enterer. They've got it, they've got a degree of enlightenment, but their root illusions and defilements have just been kind of lessened and reduced. So they've still got a long way to go if they want to become an arahant or more enlightened, right? More or less enlightened. But sometimes it is severed, but only to a partial degree. In all these cases, the insight of emptiness or no mind will qualitatively be the same. And we could also say in a supramundane sense, it will qualitatively be ordinary. That the Buddha experiences ordinariness. Only it's not the ordinariness of deluded fantasies and confusion constantly racking our mind, right? And then being kind of awash in the scum of our greed and our anger and our delusions, etc., right? Okay? So in all these cases, the insight of emptiness or no mind will qualitatively be the same, but the intensity and clarity will vary. Imagine, for example, that you are stuck inside an old well, the mouth of which has been boarded over with planks and covered with dirt. A wind comes up and blows some of the dirt off, allowing a flicker of light to shine through the boards before another wind covers them over again. Suppose then that someone brushes away the dirt and removes a plank, so that light begins to stream steadily into the well, or that one is finally able to hop out of the well and see the full sun. Then suppose that one actually becomes the sun itself. All of these experiences of sunlight are qualitatively similar and may be called illumination, but the difference in degree is vast. Okay, let's try this one again. I'm interested in this as well. Imagine, for example, that you are stuck inside an old well. So you're stuck in samsara. You're stuck in the world of delusion. You're stuck in the world of greed, anger, and delusion, suffering. Okay, dukkha world. Imagine, for example, that you are stuck inside an old well, the mouth of which, the top, the opening hole of the well, the mouth of which has been boarded over with planks and covered with dirt. A wind comes up and blows some of the dirt off, allowing a flicker of light to shine through the boards before another wind covers them over again. Okay, so every now and again, a wind comes along, a little bit of the dirt is uncovered, and then you experience a little bit of that light. Okay, but then, wind comes again and brings the dirt back. Suppose then that someone brushes away the dirt and removes a plank, so that light begins to stream steadily into the well. Or that one is finally able to hop out of the well and see the full sun. Then suppose that one actually becomes the sun itself. So let's continue. All of these experiences of sunlight are qualitatively similar and may be called illumination, but the difference in degree is vast. The same holds for the experience of emptiness and no mind. In principle, the first glimpse of no mind is the same as the enlightenment of a Buddha. This is very Chan, this is very Mahayana. Theravadins probably wouldn't like this, a lot of them, but so there's a little bit of enlightenment in all of us, isn't there? So in principle, the first glimpse of no mind is the same as the enlightenment of a Buddha. One has seen the Buddha mind, knows its character, and has developed a firm faith that this enlightenment is intrinsic to all beings, that this true nature, this original nature, this non-discriminatory mind, right, applies to everything. This no mind applies to everything. There's nothing that is outside of that no mind or against that no mind. There's nothing that exists outside of emptiness. There's nothing that is too big for spaciousness. But there is still a big difference between this experience and the full and perfect enlightenment of Buddhahood itself, in which this enlightened potential is fully actualized. Indeed, the Buddhist tradition has many different systems for describing enlightenment and its stages, from the four fruits and the concept of arahant in Theravada Buddhism, to the schemes of 10, 13, 42, or 52 stages of the Mahayana Bodhisattva. That's it. That's the end of the reading. So, questions, comments? Complaints?
Hold on, I think I left something down there. That's all.
Yeah, you left your brain down there.
Maybe.
So the interpretation of getting to a certain point in the well, or kind of climbing up to the well, this is still in the realm of attachment to self. So this is still in the realm of the mundane samadhi, right? And this is confusing the mundane samadhi, which can be very, very profound, very incredible, right, with the entry into the stream. Because that mundane samadhi, that mundane wisdom still has attachment to the notion of a self, there's this constant outflow. There's this constant grasping, attachment, involvement with all of these things. So it's like that beginning point when you're at the bottom of the well, and although there might be a little bit of the wind comes along and blows off some of the dust, ultimately the wind comes back and the dust comes back and it's dark, right? But when you go into this 7 phase, no self, no mind, the notion of a self, okay, and there's many stages of this, there's many maps for this, but the notion of a self is no longer believable for you at a very intrinsic level, right? That you cannot believe in the notion of a self. You will experience that. You will experience attachment to pain and difficulties, and, if something very difficult happens, you will probably feel very upset about that. You suffer a lot, right? But this notion of a self will not return, right? Because it's like once that board has been removed, the well is too deep to just be filled up with dust, right? You're not on a well on Mars. You're in a well at that point in, a place that's not so dusty, because you've done all that work. You've tried so hard, and now you've got, you've tasted the fruit. So the entry point in Theravada is something called a stream enterer or a sotapanna. So there's 3 qualifying factors for if you've entered the stream, right? If you've attained like an initial stage of enlightenment. First is that you have full faith in Buddhism, in the Buddha's teachings, right? The path of the Buddha. Secondly, you don't have attachment to rites and rituals, or you don't have attachment to the notion that some specific ritual or some specific way of doing things is going to make you enlightened. And then third is that you no longer believe in the notion of a self. You don't have that belief like in your heart. You don't fall back on the notion of a self. Of course, stuff comes up, stuff goes away, but none of that leads to a continuum of this notion of a self, like I am someone. Hello, everyone, I am someone. Now, they might say something like that, right? But it would be with detachment. They'd be using it for a particular purpose. And then you would go to, and then the other, what goes along with that is a lot of the base desires, a lot of the kind of more negative states of mind do not come up so much anymore. So a sotapanna or a stream enterer, for example, they can't go to hell anymore, because their way of the mind, like the quality of their mind, is such that they won't take actions that lead to hell realms or lower realms. They take actions that lead to human realms, or maybe a less ideal human experience, but still in the realm of a human. So they wouldn't be like spiraling into weeks and months of depression or what have you. And usually what I imagine, someone in that situation, right, who attained like stream entry, when the heat gets turned up, their practice gets turned up as well. So it's not like they're going to be in a very difficult situation and then like their life is going to fall apart. They're going to practice more intensively at that time, right? They're going to be put more on the spot of their practice at that time to meet the needs of the situation. And then the step up from that is like a Sakyagami, and I don't know if there's some other qualifying like signs, but specifically, it's another layer, it's another level of reduction of like the base desires, like sensuality, sexuality, things like that. And then you get to an anagami, which is a jhana addict. Anagamis are basically constantly in a state of jhana, and they're addicted to the sublime experience of jhana, of being absorbed in meditation all the time. And they don't have sexuality anymore. They don't have a sexual drive. I heard but they also can enjoy like nature as well. Like they can enjoy vast landscapes. They can enjoy like sublime nature. And then an arahant is the enlightened, kind of enlightened, or doesn't have fetters anymore, doesn't care about jhana, is not attached to something that is so profoundly pleasant and wonderful and spacious. They're not even attached to that. Something that's so pure, that's so beneficial, they're not even attached to that. So it's interesting stuff. I was never really very interested in that up until recently. And Theravada has a model that's a little bit more simple. And then Mahayana, as the tradition of Mahayana developed, like in China and other places, they developed a lot more models and a lot more information about different potentialities that people may have as they go on those stages of enlightenment. And they put a very high importance on the notion of a bodhisattva, which is someone who works for the enlightenment of others. So, any questions?
Yeah, I guess one more thing. I feel like looking at the diagram, the fifth one is where you're supposed to let go of the method, right?
Well, up until now, so the fifth one is pure but effortful concentration on the method, but you're still attached to those three things. No, so that's you have to hang on to that one, because samadhi happens naturally. Samadhi happens naturally. So you have to hang on as much as you can until it's. But here he didn't say it like that. So you just have to hang on to a point where you see from a very concentrated, very stable place, very aware place. So you use the previous four ones. You have to kind of have this capacity to be aware of your mind to such a clear extent that you see the scattered mind before meditation. You see the initial efforts to apply the meditation. You see the coarse but unbroken application of the method. You see the subtle and unbroken application of the method, but still wandering thoughts. You see and experience the pure but effortful concentration on the method, where now you are only and sustainably, right, experiencing, counting the breath coming in, the breath going out. And that's a high state. That's a rare state. That's a difficult state to get into. So until you're in a state like that, and in a state like that continuously, right? So you're in a state like that continuously, and then from a place of very clear, stable concentration, after being in that state for at least 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 minutes, that kind of deal, you say, oh, I notice that within myself, the mind is so naturally aware that my holding on to this meditation method is not necessary. And that's when the meditation method is released. But it has to come from a very sustained and clear place of practice. And I think it's easy to delude ourselves, and it's easy to get into like fugue states, or like where we think we are aware of the mind, but we're not really aware of the mind. We're just like sitting there talking to ourselves. So a lot of the initial training is like breaking down this system where you can convince yourself that you're in a state that you're not actually in, right? And that's where you grit your teeth and you experience the difficulty, and you either go insane or you just keep going back to the stage that you're actually at. Because you won't enter into samadhi if you're deluding yourself, or if you're like sitting there talking to yourself and think that you're at, a particular point when you're not. So that's where there's a lot of value in like these intensive meditation retreats. That's why there's a lot of value in, becoming a monk temporarily or what have you. So that you get to
Thank
have that experience.
you.
Yeah.
Answers my question.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we will be coming to, me and my teacher, and there'll be other people in our group, will be coming to America on June 7th in the LA area. And, you're invited to come and join our group for a period of time. You can come and stay with us. You can follow the master. We'll be there for a few weeks. We may do some traveling in the U.S. as well. We're not going to be driving to your house because you think it would be interesting to do that. But, invitations are certainly possible, real invitations. And, you're receiving that real invitation as well. So it's a great opportunity to connect with, my master, my teacher in our organization. We're very much trying to build out the organization in the U.S., to establish more meditation centers and intentional communities for doing good deeds, for eco-farming, for, supporting people in need. So please consider about that starting June 7th, and we'll be there for a few weeks. And then we also have the upcoming trip to India on July 20th is that starting time. So if you're in the U.S., you may come to meet the master in June, and then whoever you are, you may come to join for our 3-month meditation retreat in Bodh Gaya, India. 1-year visa is only $40 for American citizens for India. And then you just need to get your flight, and you can stay there, and we'll provide for your food and your shelter and very high-level teaching. So, maybe write it down and watch it back so you understand what I'm talking about, so that you can make use of it. This is a big way. This is a big way that we heal. This is a big way that we abandon our life. And it's a certain pathway where you use all your gumption. You use all the capability and means that you've developed up to this point as a business person or as a family person, etc. And then you put all that together and you follow the leader. You follow the instructions. That's to make use of the invitation, not that anyone here is being instructed. I'm not trying to carry anybody on my back. That's the reality of it. So it's just an invitation.
Bante, I have a question.
Yeah.
With applying for the visa, do we need a letter to go with the visas as far as our destination?
No, you're just going there as a tourist, and a 1-year visa for India as a tourist is should be $40, and figure it out as much as you can. And if there's something you can't figure out specifically in the application, then you can send me a message and let me know about that.
Yeah, because I was told we needed a letter.
Well,
all right.
yeah, do your best, and be as specific as you can about it, and find out as much about it as you can, and then you can bring up the very specific issue you're running up to me, and then I'll see if I can give you some help with that. But it's very much pilgrimage. It's very much like using your resources to let go of everything that you're involved with up to this point and show up and have enough faith that somebody will help you, get there from the airport, for example. So yeah, do your best to get out there, and we'll meet you there. And you've got a lot of strange sounds and voices coming from your mic, Gloria. Okay. So we've got a... Yes?
Okay.
We've got a question here from
All right,
Robert.
so I'm going to. Oh,
Yes?
no, go ahead.
Okay. We've got a question here from Robert Lamb, who says, would you say the Chan method is more directed to the no-mind method, whereas Theravada method has a more step-by-step approach like mindful of body, Vedana, mind, and Dhamma? No, I wouldn't say that. The Chan method and the Theravada method are both trying to facilitate people to become stream enterers, fundamentally. And there are a lot of different perspectives and dynamics about it. Some of the major ones will be like the emphasis on like your Buddha nature, your Buddha mind, right? And then from the other side, the Theravada, that, you know, you're either enlightened or you're not. But all of these traditions are stemming from the Buddha's original enlightenment. They're stemming from the original tradition of Buddhism that was a human tradition, not a scriptural tradition or a philosophical tradition, but a tradition of the Buddha's enlightenment, so that the Mahayana and modern schools are stemming from the Pali Canon, right, the original Pali Canon text, but that all the tools that are available are tools that we can use. And really, it applies, I think some of you have heard me say this, shut up, help, or get out of the way. It's not something to talk about. You know, you've got these people who haven't put in a single day's work, and they're talking about, you know, they're complaining about their paycheck. They're not even a Buddhist, right? They don't even take refuge in the Sangha, and they're complaining about what they're getting back from it or what's appearing to them. So you put in the work, you be as serious as you can, and that's how you get the benefits from the path. And there's a maybe a more extreme path about serious practice, and then there's a more communal path, or a path that is more suitable for lay people, which is concerned with like dana and sila, right? Generosity and virtue. But in general, even if you, because you weren't born a monk, even, you have to walk that lay path as well. Because if you just hyper-focus on meditation, you're not going to be successful, even if you get into, most of the time, even if you get into these deep states or special states. Because there's so much attachment there at so many different levels that hasn't really been addressed. And generosity begins to chip away at those levels, especially as Americans, right? Because we don't practice generosity. What do you? That's my money, right? I don't offer that. I don't share that. So people don't want to listen, and somehow we've built this community here. This community has come about where people do want to listen and practice and try, and it's really amazing because you see so many places online that are Buddhist adjacent or meditation adjacent or whatever. They don't have any community. They can't build anything. You know, and then everyone's running around, I'm enlightened, I'm enlightened, I'm enlightened, like a chicken with a confused mind, and they're not really practicing. So you show up and you practice and you try and you get as serious about it as you want to, right? But there's people who really want to be very serious about it, and that's great, and I'm here to support that. I'm here to provide for your housing, your food, your clean water, your resources that you may need, okay? Dhamma teachings. And then there's people who are, you know, they want to live a better life, and they want to take care of their family, and they want to use the teachings of the Buddha to do that, and they want to concern themselves with the true Sangha. They want to concern themselves with the community of monks and nuns and the community of the Triple Gem. And so that such a person should focus on dana and sila and practicing meditation such as mindfulness and detachment, and not seeking after something or trying to practice too intensively or seriously. The degree to which most people should practice intensely and seriously is the degree to which they're concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. So if you come to India, or you stay at the meditation center, ideally a meditation center with monks and nuns, a monastic affiliated meditation center, then you can go there and you practice seriously, right? But otherwise, dana and sila and listening to Dhamma talks, practicing mindfulness in your daily life, practicing meditation, but you don't kind of let your head go out of place because you want to be more peaceful. You just practice to be more peaceful and to be more generous and to be more good. And everybody enjoys that.
I have another question. This is Gloria. Do we
Yeah.
have to make reservation at the temple, or where are we going to stay
Think of it like a
in
homeless camp.
India?
Think of it like a homeless camp. Think of it like a free peace village. Think of it like a refugee camp. It's like you are a
Yes.
refugee and you are coming to the refugee camp. Think of it that way, and that's kind of the way that it is. So if someone, for example, was in America and they wanted to, let's say they wanted to join the retreat in India for a particular period of time. Let's say they wanted to join for the whole thing. So maybe they're coming in July 20th. They need to make the arrangements as an American person, as a person of means and ability, right? I'm not your travel planner. I'm not a travel organizer. I'm a Dhamma teacher. So you will make the arrangements to arrive at the place that it's going to be at, and then you go there. That's it. That's what happens. And, I'm kind of known to be very accessible and contactable. And if I know that you're planning to go there, then I'll make sure that, we can make sure you know where to go. There's taxis in India, there's all kinds of things, but it's as simple as that. But it is an act of abandoning your life. And, that's not an idea, that's the action. You're leaving America, you're going to India to go to a refugee camp or a Dhamma camp, right? A Dhamma refugee camp. So it's just like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Yeah. When I went to Thailand to ordain and become a Buddhist monk in 2018, I had a great job in Seattle. And then I realized that that wasn't the way I wanted to live my life. And I left that job and I started living out of my car, in Seattle. And then eventually I ran out of money and I went back home with my tail between my legs to my grandparents. I called them up crying in Colorado. I was like, I don't know what to do. They said, okay, you come home. We'll send you some money. I drove out there. So then I was staying at my grandparents'. I gave up all my American success story that I had in Seattle. It's not like I could just go back there and pick that up again. I was making more money than I'd ever made in my life. I had a great relationship. I had all this stuff, right? Seattle, come on. Smoking a bunch of weed and just living the dream, before I left all that behind, right? Before I left my job. And then I got a job in a Chinese restaurant, being a Chinese delivery man for a few weeks or a couple months. I saved up enough money to buy a ticket to Thailand. I'd never been out of the country. I'd never talked with Asian people in such a way. I had no context for that community. I had never spent time with monks in that way. I had no idea what I was going into, but I knew I wanted to be a monk. And I talked with some monks in Thailand. They said, hey, you want to be a monk? That's great. If you're here, we'll talk to you. I saved up enough money. I booked the ticket. I told my family I'm going to Thailand, and I went. That's how it happened. And I walked on faith. Okay? And I was 25 years old. I'd never been out of the country. I never had a visa. I'd never had a passport before. I didn't have anything. And I went over there. I stayed in a hostel, and I started knocking on doors. I didn't go to Khao San Road. I didn't party. I didn't experience Thailand. I didn't do any of that. I went and knocked on doors until I found a monk that interviewed me and said, this looks good. This looks right. And then he helped me to make arrangements to ordain, and the rest is monk life. Welcome to monk life. That's what the rest of it is. So, It's led here. It's led to me now being the manager of, or the caretaker, the head monk of an incredible Buddhist monastery in the south of Italy right now. And I won't be here for much longer because I'll be going to America in June 7th and going with my teacher after that. But that's how it goes. And the point is not to try and become a successful monk, whatever that is, because a successful monk is someone who realizes the path, who goes through that healing, right? Who goes through that transformation to really enter into the stream, so to speak. That's what it's about. That's what we should aspire to. And everything else is just the context for supporting us to go deeply into that path. It's not about everybody here becoming a monk. That's not what it's about. Right? But there has to be some degree of pushback so that you can realize the depth of this situation. So that you can say, oh, wait a minute. It's not that I'm someone who's following this or kind of spectating or semi-participating in this is well, I'm basically, the same as that, or like a monk, but I want to do this other stuff. It's that you're unwilling to abandon your life. You're unwilling to go that far. It's scary. It's difficult. It's too intense. It requires too much sacrifice, right? So the Sangha, or the community of lay people, are supporters, are donors, are helpers, are volunteers, are facilitators, right? For the monk, or for the community of monks, or for the Sangha. Not as a equal party or something like that. Because it's a community of generosity. It's a community of giving. That's where you really concern yourself with the Sangha. You concern yourself with the community of renunciates. You be a part of that. You be a part of my life through your support, through your help, through reaching out and saying, Bhante, I know that as a monk, you don't want to be dealing with money, and that, it's very problematic to have to deal with money as a monk. So do you need anything? Do you need help with something? Right? Can I arrange something for you? And now you're entangled in support, in help with our Sangha, with our community, right? So that's kind of a big part of it. It's not how can we become the monk inside of ourselves, but how can we be the person that we are that is concerned with the Sangha, right? With the community and involved with it. And so I bring up that side of I'm here to support you as a monastic in every way that I can. You should realize that I'm not selling you something by that. I'm saying that, I'm here to support you in everything. Where you live, what you eat, the suitable teachings, right? The support, sure, for, figuring things out, but you've got to do most of it yourself. And you've got to see that that's where my power comes from. It comes from my generosity. It comes from my detachment, not my presentation or not my ideas about things, right? Not my story about my life, or that I experienced some deep meditation or something like that. It comes from the detachment. And that my practice of offering and serving this community is my way of generosity, And that's where I get the merits from. That's where I get the blessings in my life come from, is doing in that way. So to do in that way, you can do it as a monk, but you can also do it as a lay person, right? A lay person that supports the temple, that volunteers, that is watches out on our Discord Sangha space, right? Make sure that everything's on the level, everything's safe, that the space is safe, that helps us build our website, right? That thinks about new ways to support this Sangha, that thinks about new ways to support this community, right? This Sangha that has brought so much benefit to your life. I've never sold anything in this community. Okay? And I'll tell you for sure, the teachings that I do and the facilitation that I do and the experiences that I have on the path are a lot more valuable than most of the people who are out there selling mindfulness courses and yoga courses and things like that. Significantly more valuable. So you've got to look at that, right? And that this isn't just a space to get something, this is a space to offer, to share, to show up, right? And it's, I'm kind of, I'm trying to take different roles to help like different sides of our community, like the side of being a layperson, even though I'm a monk. And that can seem like, oh, he's saying all this, it's going to benefit him, like he wants people to support him, etc. Right? I can't even comprehend the amount of support that I have. I can't even comprehend it. Right? I don't need more support. But getting involved and trying to help and trying to support, concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, is a very great way to deepen your practice. And I never got to do that as much as I would like because, I became a monk kind of quickly. So it's so like possible, and so many people do get so overwhelmed in their lives. And trust me, it will be much better if you're getting overwhelmed in your life, concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, because it's a lot deeper than it seems. The mind is a lot deeper than it seems to be, than the way that we think about it.
Earlier today, I started to clean my kitchen. And as I started to clean my kitchen more thoroughly, I started to realize there's more stuff to clean in here. And if I was to clean all day, there would just be more and more stuff to clean.
Oh, it's funny. I have a question, change the subject, but it's important. As far as the dress, is there a dress code, or do I should just wear pants or dresses? I don't know.
Well, it's going to be hot. Just dress for a hot church.
I can't hear you.
Oh. I'm sure it's going to be hot, so just dress for a hot church. And things are cheap in India. And if you temporarily ordain,
okay.
they'll give you some robes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you.
I have a question as well. So over the past 20 or so minutes that this discussion's been going on around the differentiation between a monastic and a lay person, as someone who's relatively new to studying Dharma of any capacity, I've noticed that not just in myself, but in other people who would call themselves new, there is I guess I could say idealist pursuit that people immediately jump towards for, like, I want to be a monastic. They jump to that rather quickly, and there's almost this I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the proper words for this, but it's almost like seeing a picturesque sense of enlightenment, a picturesque sense of avoiding the things that cause suffering, and then ignoring all of the elements that are genuinely difficult, right? But one thing that I read in the Diamond Sutra, not that long ago, was that regardless of how much you could ever donate, how much you could ever seek out to do virtuous deeds, or seeking out to even be a bodhisattva, if you were to simply memorize 4 phrases of the Dharma, like whichever 4 phrases, and to profess them, that would be greater in your marks, or sorry, not your marks, the cultivation of good virtues, than to give like trillions and trillions of gems to any sort of monastic organization, or to the Buddha, or anything along those lines. So in other words, it's very simple to reach a virtuous state. Why do you think it is that people feel such a strong drive towards an extreme, sense of letting go that may not even actually be strived for when they first start out? versus just simply accepting and adopting the layperson path.
Well, the Diamond Sutra is, that you spoke about is really concerned with the notion, right, that the Dhamma is the most valuable offering that one can give. There's nothing more valuable that can be given to you than the Dhamma. And
Right.
people, I don't know, some of these people seem to have been hanging out here for a while, and this is not a normal kind of group or a normal kind of community, so clearly they're getting something from it, right? But anyway, that's also a Buddhist belief, right? That's a Buddhist social cultural belief as well. So if you memorize those lines from the Diamond Sutra and then profess them, well, there's a lot of merit in sharing the Dhamma. So this is a big, big thing that you're talking about. We see enlightenment as a possession for the self, like the highest possession for the self. And so when people hear about it and then get interested in it, they want to possess it. They want to own it. They want to make it theirs. And there have been a lot of groups or teachers that have exploited that, right? So like Kaldasa, Daniel Ingram, the Mind Illuminated tradition, where they give these maps of enlightenment and they sell these books and say, meet this descriptive factor, meet that descriptive factor. Now you're this level of enlightenment. Now you're that level of enlightenment. And it doesn't really work like that. It can't work like that. And I'm looking into, checking more into the status of some of those communities, but in general, it does not work like that. It cannot. Because the practice is too subtle, it's too deep, it's too practical, it's too realistic. Like if you want to reach the first stage of enlightenment, you have to abandon your life. You can't reach the first stage of enlightenment unless you abandon your life. And yes, you can do that in like a personal meditation way, but that was even rare in the time of the Buddha, when people didn't have all these smartphones and all this wealth and all that stuff like that. So how rare would it be now? Just very, very exceedingly. So what you will actually find is that the people who are in this situation that you're describing don't actually want to become a stream enterer. They want to possess the notion of stream entry. They don't actually want to become a monk. They want to possess the notion of being a monk. And they think that them being Buddhist is about that. Possessing the notion of being a stream enterer on one side, and then on the more Buddhist side, possessing the notion of being a monk. And that's not what it's about. Taking refuge in the Sangha is about having direct, meaningful, real relationships with monks and nuns that you can talk to, that you can go to refuge for, right? That you can be with, that you can get advice from, that you can get support from. Now, listening to their Dhamma talks, that's more like meritorious activity rather than taking refuge in them, because that's a mind-to-mind. When people took refuge in the Buddha, when people became Shakyans under the Buddha, that was a mind-to-mind. When you ordain as a monk, that is a mind-to-mind. But ordaining as a monk is all about relationship, right? So, yeah, it's just the desiring, grasping quality of mind that is not being checked by serious practice that is concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And even most of the time, and even if you do serious practice concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, success is rare, right? So, anything else concerned with that?
Just to make sure I understand, essentially. So it's basically that people initially do not have the desire to be enlightened, but rather have the desire to have the identity of an enlightened person.
That's right.
Like it's something that is in their possession. Okay.
And that having that identity will fix their problems. That having that identity will give them whatever their problems are. So if they have a problem of like mental illness, that it will fix their mental illness. If they have a problem of lack of social authority or relevance, it will fix that. if they have a problem of feeling weak, then it'll fix that. Right? And they don't need to become enlightened or even to think that they're enlightened to possess the notion of that. You understand? So they're primarily concerned with possessing the notion of monks, the notions of Buddhism, the notions of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, possessing those rather than taking refuge in those. Because when you take refuge in those, it's a very practical situation. And it's very odd. It doesn't make any sense. Like that I can be this 31-year-old American Buddhist monk, right, that's telling members of my meditation community that's completely free and has always been completely free, and that there's never been any charge for anything, right, with anyone, that I am ready and willing to support your basic needs concerned with a place to live and food and those kinds of things, and that it doesn't correlate to some kind of cultish situation. It correlates to the Dhamma and the Sangha and the Buddha. So that's very, very strange. And in a Western context, that doesn't make any sense. Like, what's the catch? The catch is that you're not enlightened, that you suffer, that you might die, that you will die. You know, that if you come to India, you might die. Well, you're going to die, actually, regardless. So I wish that there were more even successful communities like the concerned with like the problematic people that you're talking about, or the confused people that you're talking about. But you see that they just they're not really able to sustain communities for the long term, because they're not empowered by taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha in a practical way. And of course, there's always exceptions. It's not a black or white thing, but I think there's a good degree of truth to this as well, from what I've seen in like the online Buddhist circles.
Well, thank you very much for the answer.
Bante, when you say die as far as yourself, right?
No, I mean, you're literally going to die.
Well, I'm not trying to. I just can't. Maybe you need to explain that, because when you say die or death.
Were you born, Gloria?
Yes.
So I've got some bad news.
I'm going to die. Yeah, I know I'm going to die, but I'm not going to India to die.
Well, let me say that, I don't want this is going to make you even more scared. Whether you go to India or not, you're going to die.
Oh, correct. Definitely.
Yeah. So that's the point.
Hmm. So you're saying that I'm going there is putting myself in a high risk?
You're at as high risk as anyone is at this moment. You are at the risk of impermanence.
Yeah, I don't have to go to India to be at risk.
No, this is the thing, right? Is that it's a constant moment by moment reality that there's no debate about, there's no discussion about. That is what the Dhamma is concerned with. It's not your preference about it. It's not your self-view about it. It's not your idea about it. It is it. Continuously, all the time.
I understand.
Yeah, all the time. So it's kind of like that. And then bringing our practical mindset and our creative mindset and our conceptual mindset to this acceptance and realization, and then acting according to that. That's why we take refuge in the meditation masters, because we understand how little we're actually at that place and living in that way, and we understand how possible it is to be in that way, and that people are in that way, so we take refuge in them, because we will die. We will go through that impermanence. We will experience that. So we take refuge in those that can help us to detach from ourselves.
Okay. Now it sounds clear. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, anyone else? we've got to start somewhere. We might as well start here. Oh, Melissa, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Hi, Bante. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. What meditation center are we all meeting in Los Angeles?
I will send you the address in the coming days, okay?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Also, I would like to offer to have a room for you there at the airport when you arrive on the 7th. I'm offering that so that you can rest before traveling on to the meditation center. So please let me know if and when I can do that for you. Also, please.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa.
Okay. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, let's finish with the sharing of the merit, okay? We've come together, we've practiced meditation, we've listened to some really rich Dhamma teachings, and we've made a lot of merit. So let's dedicate that merit outward towards all beings. Please unmute your mic if you're here on Discord, and you can repeat after me. Okay. May all the merits that we have done till now
May all the
May
May
merits that
all
we
the
have
merits
merits
till
that
now
we
we
have
done
done
to
till
now
now
be dedicated and shared out
be
be
dedicated
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 and
and
shared out
shared out
them
towards all beings.
towards
all
all
beings.
towards
Towards all
all
beings.
beings.
May all beings receive,
May all
May
May
all
all
May
beings
all
beings
receive,
beings
receive,
receive,
rejoice,
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 rejoice
and share in these merits.
and share
share
in
and
in
these
these
share
merits.
share
these
in these
merits.
merits.
May it be,
May
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 it
it
be,
be,
May it be.
may it be,
may it
May it
be,
be.
may it truly be.
may
may it
May
truly
it
be.
truly
may it
be.
truly, truly, truly be.
Okay, dear Sangha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right. See you all tomorrow.
Sadhu.
Bye bye.
to
Sadhu.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.